Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Hi, everyone. Today I'm speaking with Natalie Younglai. She's the founder of BIPOC TV and Film. She's also a TV director and screenwriter. And today we talk about how to achieve greater diversity and inclusion on local film and TV sets in Canada. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Hi, Natalie. How are you doing? I am good. I'm excited to talk to you. I think we should start by explaining, what you do for a living or how you describe yourself, because you seem to wear a lot of hats. And you started off as a professional musician, a harpist, right? And which I love. And because there's not very many harpists around, it feels like. And then you made your way into filmmaking. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I guess right now I call myself a screenwriter. Um, and that, kind of covers writing. And in my mind, it covers beyond that. My parents always said, don't go into music, do something, practical like computers or teaching. Um, and like music was always supposed to be just a fallback. But I was a young single mom. I had to take care of my child. I needed a job that I could, have a little bit of flexibility, and still be a parent. So that was music, and it was a lot of shuffling around on the weekends, loading the harp, unloading it, going to weddings and weddings and weddings and events. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
it
not an
was a lot.
easy instrument to cart around. It's not a
No,
flute.
it's not a flute. No, and it's not a violin.
So then you made your way into filmmaking, and you are the founder of BIPOC TV and Film. And I looked at your website. You have many awards. You have many accolades, let's say, for your work, and inspiring, inspiration awards and humanitarian awards and all kinds of awards. Would you say this is your life's work now?
I think I don't know. I hope not. I think I just kind of stumbled into it because of my frustrations with the industry that I was in, and just wanting to change things. And you know, I I have received all these awards, but it's not just all on me. Like, it's a
Hmm.
community of people, and it's a lot of people kind of working together and working for the same thing. And I think, just in the past few years, it has resonated with people, and the organization has grown in ways that I never even imagined. When I started I never started it as like a not for profit, or with any huge vision for it, which is probably bad. It was
No.
more like, it was very self-serving in the beginning. It was just about like, I needed to connect with other, especially creatives who were people of color who felt the same way, and it just really blossomed from there.
So tell me about let's talk about Canada as an industry in filmmaking, television. Um, how are we doing in the way of equity? How are we doing in what was your experience like?
I feel like it's like one step forward, two steps back, and it really does feel that way. Like, we make a little bit of progress. There's a little bit of acknowledgement that things need to change. Things change for a little bit, or there's the intention to change for a little bit, and then things happen where it feels like it's a step backwards. Like, one of our major broadcasters just made an announcement for their lineup for the fall. And I look at all the new shows, and all the new shows are white, and the year before they made a commitment to like 30% representation. And it it's really hard to come to terms with that kind of like double speak, I guess, if you want to call it that, but like, it's not consistent.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that's really hard, and makes it makes a lot of us feel like, are we really getting anywhere? Like, how much
Mm.
of it is real? How much of it is a true commitment, and how much of it is really going to last?
Right. Like how much of it is a press release? And then, I mean, you wouldn't think that we have to hold everybody accountable all the time for something that they announced, last year, or you said you were going to do this and, oh, we've been watching and you're actually not. There's nobody doing that job. And why should they? Like you know what I mean? Like we shouldn't
Yeah,
have to do that job. We shouldn't have to be
exactly.
holding people accountable. Where, when I think about our big broadcasters or, in this country at least, if there's a changeover at the top, is that where the two steps backwards always comes in? It's like, oh, there's new management and now they want to put their own spin on things, or now they want to do this and they get rid of a bunch of things, cut this, cut that, and then do things. Is that just maybe one piece of that puzzle?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a few changes like at the top or near the top, but I think the true changes that need to happen at the top have not happened. We have never seen someone who is at the head of a broadcaster in Canada who is Black or Indigenous or a person of color, and uh, I'm just, I'm speechless. Like how
Yeah.
I just don't understand how that can happen. I understand how that can happen in Canada, but I mean, like, it really shouldn't be that way,
But why is it
and
that way, right? Like, because that's what we always hear people say. Well, they just hire the best person for the job. Why should they have to hire somebody that, is a woman or is a person of color when they're just looking for the best person?
I think
I'm
the
playing
thing
devil's
is,
advocate here, right? Okay. Just so we're clear.
just clear. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that if you do have to step back and look at it from like a systemic perspective and a historical perspective. And if you're only looking for people who have the experience or who have 30 years of experience, well, you're going to keep getting the same people. You're going to keep getting, mostly white people, because that's who has been fostered in the industry. And you haven't had, you know, years and years and years of BIPOC creatives who've been fostered or, elevated through the pipeline up to get the experience, to get the knowledge, or to even be in the industry for so long, to last that long, to get into those positions. I have met so many BIPOC creatives who've left the industry, and to me, that is so sad that you have these amazing, incredibly intelligent people who, if they had been nurtured or encouraged just a little bit, you know, um, and if they had just stayed, they would have eventually had all that experience. But instead, they left the industry, and now they're living amazing lives, having amazing careers in different industries. And so, if every time you have the one exec who is BIPOC who makes it for like 3 or 5 years, and then they leave because it's too draining and it's too tiring, you're never going to get that same like 30 years of experience at a broadcaster that you would need at at that level.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
one might argue that 30 years of experience doing something is not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've been doing the same thing for 30 years and, when I look at, we have less people watching television these days than we've ever had. So maybe we do need to shake things up and change things so that we are innovating with the times and how people watch their shows now. It's very different than even 5 years ago. And I think that that's sometimes where we miss it because it's so structured. Like, I guess the only way to describe it is it's very colonial, right? It's like we have one big figurehead and they get paid the most money and they make the decisions. And then we have
Mhm.
everybody that falls in behind that. And it's like, I don't think that's the direction we're heading in anymore. Do you?
Yeah, I think innovation is right, and you can't. We all have to innovate. We all have to kind of be flexible and be like looking at the next fresh thing. And I think that's what's missing in Canada. In the U.S., that's what they care about. They don't like they care about like we have the next new big bright shiny thing, right? In terms of the creative part, not about some of the
Yeah.
other horrible things that are happening. And in Canada, it's more like what have you done that you can prove that you've done it in the past, and if you've done it in the past, then we'll give you a chance again. Or it's like how can you make the show that's like the other show that's successful. That's not innovative at all. That's just trying to replicate. And I think, yeah, things have changed. The way we watch things have changed. The way our attention span has changed, and we need to have our shows that reflect that.
100%. So, as you were talking, I was reminded of with my kids, we watched Red Panda. Is that what it's called?
Turning Red.
Yeah, sorry, Turning Red. I'm like, what was it called? I've seen so many animated films in my house. It's like, what was that one called? Anyways, we loved it, right? And we've watched it many times. And then we watched it right away. And the talk about that film from some people, to me, was astounding. Like, I just didn't, it was so, I just don't know how they got away with talking about it like that, the way they did. And I find that happens a lot, right? Like, there'll be a film and it's like, oh, and it was directed by this woman and it was this and that. And then it's like, this a certain section of people just kind of glom onto that and tear it apart. And where does that come from? Like, when did we start doing that? Or have we always done it, Natalie, and I just didn't really notice it before?
I mean, I feel like, with Turning Red, I read that there was some reviewer, a white
Yes.
man who he was like, I don't relate to this. Who wants to watch this kind of a thing? I'm not in it. Who is this for? And it was so hilarious to me because I feel like all my life, I never saw myself on screen. Like I never saw myself as part of stories. And so I always had to do the work of like, who can I relate to in this thing? Who is the closest either to like, at one point I'm like, oh, Wonder Woman is brunette. Like it's so crazy. But like that's always the work that me as a Asian woman has had to do is like recognize pieces of myself and other things that are not representing me. So like I can relate to Walter White in Breaking Bad, because he just wants to do the best for his family. Like yes, I'm not him, he's not me, he doesn't look like but yeah. I can still relate to that thing. And I think the thing is, if you've always had that, has always been fed to you and you've never had to do that work, to suddenly have to do that work feels like an incredible amount of work. Like it's not an easy thing. And it just feel like I feel like the people who have historically been centered all the time are not being so centered, and so it makes them feel so displaced and so like out of sorts.
Isn't that a good thing though? I mean,
I think so.
We need more and more and more and more of that. Like I just don't know what I read that review and I just thought, wow, did you not show this to anyone before you posted this? Like, so they could say, Bud, like, this is not like, what are you talking about? Because it's a beloved film now. It's like it's in the rotation of top movies we put on here because it's so good for so many reasons.
Yeah.
And I do think that, we need more of that, but it's funny isn't it funny though, Natalie, how, the people like that, they get a lot of attention when they tear something apart that isn't what they're used to, or that it doesn't, it doesn't apply to them. It's like, well, come on, like, but they get a lot of attention for that, and it attracts the noise that can really clog up my brain sometimes and hurt my head.
Right.
From just like, I can't believe it. I can't believe we're still here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's why, like, when that came out, I was I was glad that the editor didn't pull it. I'm like, we need to know. We need to know that there are people who think this way and who still think this way, and we need to know that that is one of the people who does.
Yeah.
Like, it's better to know who is against you or who doesn't like what you have to say, because then you can either avoid them or you can, like, how to approach them. I
Right.
think it's a little slippery when, if everyone's like, yeah, it's great, and then secretly, they don't like it, or
True.
they're secretly opposed to it. Like that happened with there was a bunch of white producers in Canada who got together who didn't like the fact that Telefilm was starting to address the inequalities that have been happening for years and years, and the way that the funding has been doled out. And they secretly wrote a letter to Telefilm. Like, they got together, this little group of white producers who have always gotten money, and they wrote a letter basically saying this, all these new things are infringing on what we're entitled to. And it eventually came out, and and I think that's good, because I want to know who really feels that way. Because, like, don't then come to, like, an event where you're supposedly, you're showing that you embrace diversity, but really you don't. You're just doing it for show.
Good point. I never looked at it like that. It's better to know. Yeah, you're right. But I always think, I've been trying to figure it out for so long, just like why some white people panic so much about equality, equity, and I the only thing I can come up with is that the people truly believe there's not enough to go around. Like, there's just not enough. I can't think of anything else. Like, Natalie, if you get that, then that means I can't get it. And I mean, that's
Right.
not true. It's logically, it's wrong. It's not true. But I saw it all throughout my career. And eventually, I worked in television for a very long time. And without me even knowing it, I became that too, right? Because it becomes a survival thing. You're like, oh my gosh, everybody around me is panicking about not having enough cake. And I want cake too. And I better, like, protect my cake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like, when you think about the producers you were speaking about, is that maybe what's in their head, that, oh, if all these BIPOC, filmmakers want some of this, then there's not going to be enough for all of us, and that's not fair.
Totally. Totally. But then, like, if you look at the numbers, the numbers don't even say that at all. Like, who is getting the over $4 million range? I think there was one in all of, like, however many years. But yeah, I think that scarcity mindset it totally feeds into it. And like, the sense of entitlement. But I also think it's like a different, I don't know, it's like a different perspective. Like, I remember, I can't remember who it was, but they were in the news and they were, like, talking about how their high school was diverse. And then they showed a photo and there was, like, one or two, people who were BIPOC in his entire school. And that was very illuminating to me, the fact that for someone who's white and who has a lot of power, seeing two people meant diversity to him. But for me, I look at that, I'm like, why are there only two? Where is everyone else? And
Yeah.
and it's just a very interesting perspective shift.
Okay, I want to talk about that. But before we do that, I just, what we like to do is we like to thank our guests for spending time with us. And the way we do that is we ask our guests to choose a Canadian nonprofit, and we give that nonprofit $500 in your name as a thank you to you. And you chose the Indian Residential School Survivor Society. We've talked about them many times on this podcast. So thank you for choosing them, and we will be giving them $500 in your name. So that's our little thank you for being here. And thank you for choosing the Indian Residential School Survivor Society. So when we think about, BIPOC TV and film and the work that's being done there, and so you started it in like 2012-ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's been a while, and you're obviously doing good work, and people are paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we, if, anyone listening to this podcast who maybe never really thought about this before, never really thought about who's making the films or who's in these films or who's behind the scenes in these films, what's something we can do to understand it better and be a part of the solution?
If you're not in the industry?
Yeah, if we're not in the industry, like I'm not in the industry anymore. So what's something I could do to be an ally?
I think like seeking out programming, like films or TV shows that are made by creatives who are BIPOC is a good thing. Just, you always need the end product, always needs the eyeballs, as they call it, or the audience, and to show that there is an audience there who is wanting to see this kind of content, and that it's super popular. That always helps. I think also looking at writing emails to broadcasters, just saying, it's really important to me as an audience member that the programming that you're programming is reflective of what I want to see, and I want to see more programming and more content that does have BIPOC creatives on screen and behind the screen. And I think that's a really important part of it as well, like that kind of, you can have that kind of audience engagement that we often don't think about. And I think like from the broadcaster perspective, they only hear from people who complain that, there was a bad word that was said on TV, but they take that seriously, right? So
yes,
if we started contacting them about other stuff, about stuff that we want to see, they would also pay attention to that as well.
And I think I totally agree, Natalie, but I think that sometimes it's scary to reach out to, a big TV station, or listen, it's not for some people. There are a lot of people that have no problem complaining about stuff, as you said. But it's, when we think about, saying, I'd like to see more of this, or I'd like to see more of that. And then when they do show something, also saying, wow, watch that series, and it's great. Thank you for, because we forget that too, don't we? When people are doing something good, to say, oh my gosh, thank you for creating this.
Yeah. And I think even, like when a movie comes out, go see it, bring other people to see it. And if you can't see it, I think you can still buy a ticket for it. There's still ways you can support it, even if you don't have, a lot of us don't have a lot of time anymore, but, that's another good way. But it's really showing that the demand is there, if you're not in the industry.
Mm-hmm. So do you call it, like, when you're thinking about the industry, what are the words that you use? Or is it inclusion? Is it equity? Is it accessibility? Like, what are some of the words that you choose when you're speaking to groups?
I use inclusion. I try not to use like buzzwords, because I find that if you use them too much, or if people are using them too much, they kind of lose their meaning, or it just becomes easy to say them, and then we start saying them without thinking about what it really means. So I think you just have to keep shifting, or just keep explaining what you mean. Inclusion doesn't mean just having people on screen, just the casting process. It's also people behind the camera. It's also like the work environment that's being fostered behind the camera. Like in writing rooms, it's not enough just to have one person who is BIPOC in the writing room, and it's not enough to have just two people, and you also need people at all the different levels. So I think that's something that we're seeing a lot of programs that are promoting entry level opportunities, which is really great. Or like targeting, we need to get into high schools and let people know that these careers are there, which is true. But we also need to be promoting people who have been toiling away and giving them the opportunity to rise up as well. So all of these things need to happen, and I think a lot of times it's easy to focus on the high school, or it's easy to focus on like the PAs, which is like the lowest, the entriest level, or internships and stuff like that. And that's not what it just needs to be everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's this conversation has really opened up, like thinking about behind the scenes, what's happening behind the scenes, because it is true. A lot of times, the answer for a lot of companies is put, the forward facing people, they can,
Yes.
we'll do this, or let's take some promo pictures and, show that we're really diverse. But if that's all it is, if it's just, window dressing, we are not, walking the walk. We're not being truly inclusive.
Yeah. And I think, it does take a lot more effort and a lot more thought. And um, like thinking through like what are the things I can really do to change the work environment, or what are the things I can really do to change like who gets to tell their stories or how they tell it. It just takes some thinking, because we haven't done it that way in the past. And so, if you're going to change things, it just requires a lot of like listening, thinking, self-reflection, and an openness as well.
Yeah, I like that. So tell me what you've been working on lately.
Um, I just, well, we launched a web series on CBC Gem called Hello Again. That was a lot of fun. That starred Alex Malari Jr. and Rong Fu. It was like a romantic comedy with some time traveling. And now I'm working on a new detective show that hasn't been announced yet, but it's really fun.
That's amazing. There's so much great Canadian, content or work, and I really think we lose that sometimes. That I know in the music world, people have mixed feelings about Canadian content, and the CRTC saying you have to play a certain amount, and there's mixed reviews on that. How do you feel about that as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that we, I don't know why we have to say Canadian content.
I know, I know, I know, I know.
Right? Like when you look at American shows, they're not like American content or American shows, like, so it already puts us at this place where we have to justify ourselves, and we shouldn't have to. We should just be. And part of it too is that funders have said, how is this Canadian? And this idea, like, what is Canadian, has really helmed us in for many years. And for many years, it meant that um, especially if you're BIPOC, you could only tell a certain type of story that would be kind of approved, where it was like an immigrant story, first generation, that kind of a thing. And it had to be about that. Couldn't be about, like, you couldn't have a romance. You couldn't have, a horror series, or anything like that. And I think, that's starting to shift, which is good. And at the same time, we have to invest in our own shows, and because we have less people, it means that there is a little bit less money. But if you invest in it, like, then you can compete on that same level. And part of that is also the confidence of, kind of like what you were saying earlier in the conversation about innovation, like being confident enough to green light shows that we haven't seen before, that like are interesting, and that from voices we haven't heard or seen before. Like if you look at Sort of, which is on CBC, like that's doing incredibly well around the world, and it's fresh, it's new, it's like those are all the things that that's what we need to be striving for in all of our shows.
I love that. Yeah, it's so true. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And you've really pulled back the curtain and given space to think about things that maybe you don't think about when you're watching a show, or notice what you're missing when you go to watch a show. Like, what is missing from, what am I looking for? It's really, yeah. I love it, Natalie. Yes. Okay. So your website and all of your shows and all of your work is on your website is natalieyounglie.com. So Natalie is spelled Nathalie, and then Younglie, YOUNGLAI.com. And you're on Twitter and Instagram at nyounglie. It's been great. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you. So great chatting with you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.